Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient.
For this week's episode, I'm very, very pleased to present Groundwaters Live is Resilient. Groundwaters is a publishing endeavor that my friend Pat and I spearhead. Pat Edwards and I have run Groundwaters for the last many years. We try to showcase the exceptional local talent in our area for over 16 years. The first 10 years of the magazine were in a literary magazine that was distributed free of charge through libraries, organizations, and businesses. We have since merged into a publishing company where we do more than just the magazine, and instead of the magazine, we produce an anthology once a year that has approximately the same amount of submissions as we would in 4 quarters worth of the magazine. This year, we have over 75 authors and poets who have contributed over 170 stories and poems for this annual anthology of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and artwork. These are generally family-friendly offerings and will entertain all ages. Enjoy. I'm very pleased to have many of the authors come and read their work for you. It's not live, but it's as close as we can get in 2020. Thank you. Greetings from Jennifer Chambers, co-editor of Groundwaters Publishing. 2020. As a sad, confusing, scary, boring, surprisingly joy-filled year winds down, I find myself, as always, looking for the silver lining. Groundwaters and all the friends we have met through the publication, in all its iterations, remains a constant part of that silver lining for me. The motif of our logo, the rippling water, is a great symbol of that. Our lives seem almost forced to be compartmentalized. You make friends as a child at school, in the activities you participate in, by those who happen to grow up around you, or friends of friends. As an adult, especially as a rural adult, it becomes harder. I was happy to begin my writing career as an adult here at Groundwaters. It was one of the things that gave me the courage to write professionally. These people were among the first to recognize me as an adult writer too, even through all my doubt. Even though I have a brain injury, I am a parent, I live in a small town, I never finished my bachelor's degree. I am a writer because I call myself one. I am a writer because I seek out ways to better understand my world and the greater world around me. I am a writer because I write. As I passed more of my words into the world in different ways, for widely variant publishers and magazines, I understood that the main thing that mattered was that I was creating something of value, and I carried that feeling of courage with me. We believe in the value of each author here at Groundwaters. Our authors follow the rules of civility and try to make our work accessible to the most people because we all share the joy of creating something. We've bent the rules a bit this year because of the nature of this year really called for flexibility, and you'll see that, but the book is better for it. All of the perspectives here are important. The main lesson for me in 2020 has been gratitude. Beyond being grateful for the things like my own family, food, shelter, etc., I'm grateful for you. All of the people who work on the publication, in whatever form, are brothers in arms in creating something bigger than ourselves. We're creating ripples on the water, a circle of friends, persistent, creating value. Our first reader is my co-editor, Pat Edwards.
Jennifer Chambers and I each wrote an introduction to the 2020 Groundwaters anthology. And this is my contribution called Looking at 2020 in the Rearview Mirror. To put it mildly, 2020 has proven to be an extremely difficult year, not only for those of us in Oregon, but nationally and even internationally. We've been hit by a pandemic that originated in and has spread worldwide. By mid-October, the coronavirus, COVID-19 as it has been called, has taken the lives of over 223,000 people in the United States alone, and the spread of the virus is still climbing in a third peak. Lane County has recorded 2,242 total cases of the virus and 27 deaths in the same period. As quarantines were mandated throughout Oregon, the economy plunged. Non-essential businesses were shut down in phase one and jobs were lost. Schools closed early and students were asked to complete their classes online. On May 26, 2020, quarantines, wearing masks, social distancing, washing hands frequently, and trying to disinfect everything we touched, 4 rogue police officers in Minnesota kept a knee to the neck of a black man, George Floyd, that resulted in his death. It immediately triggered Black Lives Matter marches protesting racism and police brutality all over the nation. Meant to be peaceful protests, some generated riots that caused considerable destruction. Lane County school openings were delayed in the fall because of the danger of students and teachers contracting COVID-19. School districts tried to work out ways to let younger children have in-school instruction while older ones would continue online. When a third wave of the virus hit, plans to open schools for all students were scrubbed. Our summer became hot and dry, and wildfires began occurring throughout the West. On September 7th, 2020, strong winds blew throughout Lane County, and trees near the small town of Blue River, Oregon, on the beautiful McKenzie River were ignited. The resulting holiday farm fire burned 173,393 acres of land, destroying not only the town of Blue River, but 431 homes and 24 non-essential structures along Highway 126 west of McKenzie Bridge to the town of Vida. Weary from the isolation and caution of avoiding the virus, we were faced with political tensions that began to chafe as contentious campaigning began intensifying at the approach of the November 3rd presidential election. Then President Donald Trump and his wife Melania, their son Barron, as well as over 25 others with connections to the White House, tested positive for COVID-19, and the growing controversy over the effectiveness of wearing masks came to the forefront. As writers, we found that it was hard to focus on writing in the beginning, especially. Jen and I feared that we wouldn't have enough submissions to publish our annual anthology. Less than 30 pieces had been received by the end of July. We put out a call to submit in early August, agreeing to extend the August 15th deadline and allow some selected longer stories than normal. Soon, stories and poems started to pour in. All of the tensions, stresses, and emotions that had built up throughout this difficult year were poured into the writing that was sent to us. When reading these stories and poems, you'll notice that we've relaxed some of our restrictions. We still have not allowed blatant political or religious opinion pieces, but there are shades of each evident. Rather than putting all of the 2020 stories and poems into their own sections, we've opted to spread them throughout the book, and we've serialized a couple of the longer stories. You'll once again find exceptional talent on our pages this year. The 6th annual volume is over 100 pages longer than years past, but we felt we needed to include as many as possible to showcase what a remarkable year we've had. We welcome many new authors and poets this year to our Groundwaters family. Thank you, everyone, for your continued support and generosity in sharing a little bit of yourself with our readers.
Our next reader is New York City poet Oswald Perez.
So this So the following set of poems takes place in an alternate universe, as if the pandemic didn't disrupt international travel. The time is September 2020, but in this alternate reality, I'm flying to my next destination for a 12-day trip to Italy. After 8 months of waiting, the day has finally arrived, and the trip is about to begin. Part 1 is the departure. As I finally pass security at Terminal 8, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here at JFK with my passport and boarding pass in hand. A smile takes over. I look out to the windows of the terminal, wondering to myself, where are all these planes going? With my supply of euros in hand, I make it to the flight's gate. Iberia, flight 6252. Destination, Madrid. After one last passport and boarding check, I walk down the gangway and board the plane. I find my seat and look out the window. The flight takes off, with Queens and the Long Island Sound fading into the night sky. When I wake up, I'll be one flight away from Italy. Part 2. Benvenuti a Italia. A long night and morning in flight, connecting through Barajas Airport. It's always a joy to see Madrid, even if it's only a connection. But as I pick up my suitcase, I look around and see the signs. Benvenuti all'aeroporto Marco Polo. It's no longer a dream. I'm on Italian soil. As the transfer arrives at the Hotel Papadopoli, the lush open space of the Giardini behind me, it's every bit as dreamy with the canals on the horizon. I can't wait to start exploring the city. As the sun sets over Venezia, it's time to meet the rest of the tour group. The conference room's windows look out towards the canals. A table full of Parmigiano Reggiano, Prosecco and Prosciutto. Our guide Eduardo introduces himself, and then the trip to come. One by one, we introduce ourselves. I'm in a familiar position, the solo traveler, but it's an endearment to the rest of the group. With dinner on the horizon, this trip is only just beginning. Part 3. The Galleria della Accademica. At the Tribune, I find myself in awe of Michelangelo's David, as everyone else around me is. Prominently featured in the Hall of Prisoners, the unfinished slaves leading up to him. The signature piece of the museum, like Mona Lisa at the Louvre, Las Meninas at the Prado, and Guernica at the Reina Sofia. I think to myself, there's no such thing as the perfect body. If it doesn't exist physically, one can chisel it. A singular wonder and a trip of wonders so far. The glass blowing in Murano, the visits to the Peggy Guggenheim collection, and sitting in the Piazza San Marco for an aperitivo as day turns to night. As we move on from Florence, I find my ticket from the tour of the Uffizi Gallery earlier in the day. I'm still thinking to myself, this can't be happening. But it is, and Rome is up next. Part 4. Roman Tourist, Turista Romano. Late Saturday afternoon. The sightseeing bus drives along the river Tiber. After a busy day exploring Vatican City and the wonders of the Sistine Chapel, a familiar tune rings out from a nearby car. The opening guitar, It's un'estate italiana, the unexpected earworm of the summer. Even if my Italian is marginal at best, I sing along to the song. The bus moves along, and the song continues, even in traffic, until it reaches the Spanish Steps and the Piazza Barberini. I step off the bus in search of the Trevi Fountain. The crowds of people lead me to it. I look around imagining Fellini's La Dolce Vita, but Sylvia is nowhere in sight. I find the coin in my pocket. Hoping for a bit of luck, I toss it into the fountain. As day turns to twilight. Part 5. Moonlight over Amalfi. After 12 days exploring this wonderful country, it's time to say Arrivederci Italia, as we gather for one last dinner, with the moon glimmering over the Bay of Napoli. Our table for 40 is at the beachside restaurant of the hotel, with bottles of wine chilling in buckets as the waves gently crash ashore. I stand up to make a toast to Eduardo, to the rest of the travelers on the bus, and to Italy itself for making me feel so welcome. It doesn't hit me that I'm flying home tomorrow morning. A long day's journey through London awaits before arriving home in NYC. As the panna cotta is brought out with shots of grappa, I take my keychain off for one last glimpse. A tear falls, and it hits me. I'm ready to fly home. I whisper out to the bay. Good night and sweet dreams, everyone. Buonanotte a tutti I sogni di oro.
Our next reader is Marv Himmel.
Shadow or substance? Shadow or substance? I can be either if I have to, but mostly I like shadow. I prefer it to substance. Substance is bold. It is greed and fame. It is anger and vanity. It is conflict. So mostly I watch from the shade, indistinct, an observer. I don't want to be recognized. A passing hint of me, perhaps. A faint memory of someone you knew. I found it safer to be a zephyr, a mist, a shadow. Nobody bothers much, and I can do what I want. But today, out walking in the wetlands far from the city on a sunny morning early, amid the bird calls, the whir of crickets, the air moving through the grass, I was free from all those aggravations. Here I felt of substance, and for a while, I liked it. Missing the bus. You probably shouldn't tell your boss you missed your bus yesterday morning because you stopped to watch a trail of ants crossing the walkway in front of you, or of how your mind began to wander, trying to imagine what the ants were thinking, and if they were thinking, and how they liked their jobs, and if they were happy with their lives. And then wondering what happens if one of them misses their bus and shows up late for work. Or maybe not at all and just calls in sick. Mother, why don't you care? I thought we were special. Why are you like that? Why don't you help? We are dying, falling apart, and you don't care. Did you ever care? Nothing has changed. The rain, the sun, the wind, and the night, they go on and on. It makes no difference to you, does it? You never did care. We were but a moment in time and place, a moment among many other moments. Nothing to concern you, nothing to coddle. You did your job. We were on our own from the beginning, weren't we? And you never did care, did you? I am an old man. I sense you now and then, elusive and ephemeral. I am unsure, but my limited mind tells me you must really be there. Long ago, I think I knew you, before the rules, before the shoulds, the nevers, and the don'ts shaped me into what I am. Now, an old man, I want to know you again. And if I can drop my walls, my judgments, and my preconceptions, perhaps you will show yourself. Show me who and what you really are. I want to know your name, your colors in the daylight and in the evening, your shape, your smell, your touch. I want to understand. I want to know if you were good or evil, and if my fences were meant to keep you close or away. I am a creature of the light, yet you tease me in shadows. You flit across the corners of my vision. You dance behind me. You glide through memories and waking dreams. I can never see you clearly, though, never certainly. And I wonder why. Is your beauty so hot it would burn? Or would your ugliness sicken me? Or both? And would you care? I sense you now and then. At least I think I do. But I can never see you clearly. Please show yourself. I am an old man.
Our next reader is Bill McConaughey.
All the World's a Stage by Bill McConaughey. I've had a rough week. First, a good friend, a gentle, kind friend, died. He was a World War II veteran, a high school biology teacher, a guy who played in retirement his guitar and sang with a lady friend who played piano at nursing homes. He grew lots of vegetables and had beehives and honey. He got so old he was falling down. He broke his hip. They took him to the hospital and fixed it, but he didn't respond well. They told his wife he wouldn't pull through, so they put him in a hospice facility. He was going downhill. I wrote him a letter, which his wife read to him. I told him 3 or 4 ways I loved him for being such a nice fellow. He smiled. He was 93. Then I called my cousin, Bob, in Wisconsin, like I've been doing every weekend for the past several months. I called because his wife has dementia and also had to be put in a nursing home. She couldn't control her bowels. She paced all day. She's been losing her appetite. She has gradually lost interest in everything. She was just curled up on her bed, eyes closed, when Bob visited her last Friday. She opened her eyes after several minutes, but didn't seem to recognize Bob. She didn't talk. She's on her way out. Slowly. She's 84. Then, as if this wasn't enough sorrow for 1 week, I almost kicked the bucket myself. I'm 81. It happened up at our vacation cabin in the Cascades on a lake. We were playing dominoes after dinner with our adult daughter, Heather, who's been living with us briefly, having returned from Hawaii recently. She has her own internet business, nutrition and exercise and life coaching, all rolled into one, and she's very good at it. She knows how to cook all these interesting, healthy foods and knows about which foods can help with bowel problems, passing gas, etc. We were playing dominoes and I was losing. Heather told my wife, Jennifer, about a company that can assess bowel problems by mail. They can help stop passing gas or having one's bowels in an uproar. Viome is the company, I thought she said. You get a kit through the mail, put some of your poop in a container, and mail it back to Viome for analysis and diet suggestions. Jennifer doesn't like dog poop, which our 2 dogs deposit generously a couple of times a day, but Jennifer is fastidious and picks it up and bags it and flushes it down the toilet. So poop is an unpleasant regular part of her daily routine. She squirmed at the idea of shipping her own feces to Viome. I wasn't having much to say about how I could improve my chances at the domino game and needed a little levity. So I asked, how is Viome different from BM? Jennifer looked at me, helpless. She usually has an answer for everything. She started laughing. Then I started laughing. Then Heather laughed. After about 6 ha-ha-ha's, I was out of breath and had to come up for air, but I couldn't stop laughing long enough to catch my breath. Jennifer was in the same predicament. She leaned to the side, almost falling out of her chair. We've been married over 40 years and never had laughed so hard together. We almost died laughing. Jennifer had tears running down her cheeks and finally said what a delight it was to be laughing so hard. I needed that, she blurted before another fading ha-ha refrain. When I couldn't catch my breath, I had realized one could almost die laughing. A better way to go than post-surgery fade-out or slow dementia demise. So, if we are lucky enough to choose our exit from this stage of life, I'll choose exit right, die laughing. Thanks for listening.
Our next reader is Lee Boutel.
This is Lee Boutel, and I'm reading Fortress Manhattan. Manhattan, Kansas buzzed with excitement. President Nixon would be speaking on campus. A large crowd gathered around the doors of Ahern Fieldhouse, hoping for a good seat. Townsfolk in church clothing strolled the sidewalks, anticipating the presidential helicopter. Camera crews from all 3 networks carried equipment through police lines into the fieldhouse. It was not your typical Wednesday at Kansas State University in September 1970. On a grassy field surrounded by a tall, woven wire fence, gathered a huge array of ominous-looking military equipment from Fort Riley. Army green jeeps, canvas-top troop carriers, armored vehicles, and helicopters. In front sat ambulances, police cars, and big black sedans, maybe FBI or Secret Service. Moving slowly through the dark Army equipment rumbled one bright red fire truck, churning with a deep diesel voice. Authorities were preparing for anything. Officials were feeling apprehensive about a presidential appearance at a university due to all the violent anti-war protests all over the country. 4 months before this, the National Guard had shot and killed 4 students at Kent State University, causing intense national outrage. Recent news of Nixon's secret Cambodian invasion had become a public relations disaster, igniting more violent protests all over. Nixon wanted to appear in control and in charge. He wanted to change the belief that students had turned against him. He and his party desperately needed a victory before the upcoming midterm elections. His nationally televised speech had to come off flawlessly. From my 3rd floor window in Seton Hall, I watched as an oversized Army truck pulled slowly onto a wet, grassy field, its huge tires digging deep, muddy ruts into the turf. Well, the football team would surely now need to find a different field to practice on. The truck moved slowly, stopping in a big open space. I wondered why the truck was cutting such deep ruts into the ground? Maybe heavy guns and ammunition? A troop truck following behind parked nearby. Out slowly emerged a dozen soldiers in helmets and combat uniforms. Some wandered around the equipment. Others gathered, watching college students in their bell-bottoms on the other side of the wire fence. I thought, how different were the lives of the young people on both sides of the fence. A college life of colorful clothing, spontaneity, variety, freedom, and romance on my side of the fence, and on the other, the scheduled, harsh, structured, disciplined, repetitive, and dangerous life in an Army uniform. I could sleep in all morning after a late night of partying. I could wear my splashed purple jeans, skip class, do what I pleased, whenever I pleased. I just had to make decent grades to avoid getting drafted, and then end up wearing olive green on the other side of the fence. I wouldn't like rising at the crack of dawn every day for rigorous physical activity, testing the limits of my endurance, and spending endless nights in the company of men not of my choosing. I'd be told what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat. I'd have no freedom, and I might be sent to Vietnam to kill or be killed. We lived such different lives on opposite sides of that fence. But we were the same age. We shared the same backgrounds, went to the same schools. Many had been drafted and weren't there by choice. That's what happened to my best friend Alan, who didn't go to college and ended up with a low draft number in the lottery based on his date of birth. All men with numbers 1 through 190 got drafted. Numbers above that were safe. I got lucky with number 282. Alan got number 22, got drafted right away. Underwent artillery training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and shipped off to Vietnam just a month before this. My older brother Earl joined the Navy to avoid Vietnam, but got sent there anyway. I feared for their lives. Alone at my window, the scene below looked surreal. My studio sat directly across the street from both the rutted grassy field and the field house, so I could see the whole show from my drafting table. I had just begun the 4th year of landscape architecture. I'd worked at my table since the morning class and stayed late to finish a design. I looked at the half-finished drawing taped to my table, one of the many tables along the window of the studio. I enjoyed my window seat. I could find inspiration by simply turning my swivel chair and gazing out the window. But now, I'd become completely distracted by the chaotic and dramatic scene unfolding below me. I watched the K-State marching band arrive at the field house. Assembling behind ropes separating the crowd from the walkway, Nixon would enter. The band wore their fancy purple and white uniforms with yellow cord trim on the jackets and golden epaulets on the shoulders. With high boots and tall, fuzzy plumed hats, they looked like soldiers from the Napoleonic Wars. As the band assembled, some nervously adjusted instruments and tuned horns as if preparing for battle. The military equipment had begun arriving early in the morning and kept accumulating on the now totally rutted turf. It no longer looked like a field for running and tossing around a football. It now resembled a muddy base for an armed invasion. If the soldiers, police, helicopters, and military equipment had come to intimidate protesters or discourage troublemakers, well, so far so good. I didn't see a picket sign or protester anywhere. The president had cleverly come to conservative K-State, known for its agriculture and veterinary medicine program, but not the anti-war activity disrupting campuses elsewhere. Just 85 miles east at Kansas University, with liberal arts and a law school, students had staged large and often violent protests, even resulting in gunfire. A Nixon visit to KU would surely lead to unimaginable violence. While freshman Senator Bob Dole knew his state well. As advisor to Nixon, Dole assured the president there'd be no significant opposition for his TV address if they limit the crowd to students with K-State ID. Officials took great pains not to allow KU students into the field house. Senator Dole also assured Nixon that with the military presence from nearby Fort Riley, trouble could be dealt with quickly, like at Kent State. Crowds grew larger around the entrance, with blaring brass horns and pounding drums piercing the windless morning. It sounded like game day. The band started playing the K-State fight song, and the crowd cheered. It felt like a pep rally. My classmates had left me alone at the studio. They felt honored having the president speak and wanted to attend. I was torn. I'd seen other important people speak at the Fieldhouse. In 1968, I heard Reverend Martin Luther King give a powerful oration about the injustices of American systemic racial segregation. His speech changed my attitude. It changed my life. I'd never understood the harsh realities of Black people, their lives in America. He emphasized the importance of pushing for change through nonviolent protest. He said, "It's the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom and human dignity." Dr. King expressed his opposition to the Vietnam War, saying, "We had a more important problem of inequality and civil rights at home." He asked, why were we pursuing a costly war that increasingly appeared doomed to failure? His words made a lasting impression on me that day in 1968 as a Kansas boy from conservative suburbs who spent summers on Grandpa's farm. I'd never heard such revolutionary thoughts. I grew up where people regularly used the N-word for Blacks, though not in my own family. The number of Black kids in my school system was 0. Although Kansas had been a free state, slave state Missouri lay right across the road. Culturally, the region aligned more with the South than the North. My brother and I related to Confederate soldiers more than Union. I'm ashamed to admit, I had a Confederate flag on my wall in high school. I thought rebels were cool. I didn't understand what the flag represents to Black people: slavery, oppression, white supremacy. I'd never heard those ideas. I was clueless until I heard Dr. King speak. A few months after King, I watched Bobby Kennedy fire students up into a frenzy after announcing his candidacy for presidency. Our hopes and dreams soared. The atmosphere in the Fieldhouse pulsed with indescribable excitement. I felt electricity tingle in every cell of my body. After the speech, I pushed my way forward and was able to shake his hand. I felt empowered. I had witnessed the beginning of a presidential campaign that offered an embattled country such inspiration and hope. I believed things could really change. Bobby promised to bring peace. We could live by the message that he brought when he said that day, "There are those that look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not." I feel honored having seen both Dr. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy speak at K-State. What powerful, inspiring leaders. Just a few months after seeing each, both of these great men fell to an assassin's bullet. Now we awaited President Nixon. Perhaps this would be an historic speech. Maybe he'd announce a major step toward peace. Would he finally share good news to quiet all the national unrest? Public opinion had turned against the war, and a majority wanted the troops home. But Nixon had stayed the course, and the end looked nowhere in sight. More than anything, I wanted my brother Earl and best friend Alan to return from Vietnam in one piece. I felt I had to do whatever I could to end the war, to participate in nonviolent protest, as Dr. King stated, because it's the most potent weapon available for change. Being 20 years old, I couldn't vote, but I could be drafted and sent to war. I didn't know much about politics except both my parents were registered Republicans and both voted for Eisenhower twice. In 1960, father voted for Nixon, mother voted Kennedy. I had no political affiliation, but I opposed both Johnson's war and now Nixon's war. I guess that made me independent. I felt an affinity for both the soldiers fighting the war and the students fighting against the war. I related to the young people on both sides. Well, I hoped to join picketers below. I believed it's our patriotic duty to stand up for what we believe, even when belittled or outnumbered. But I saw no anti-war activity, only strolling townsfolk and cheering students. My heart sank. I felt ashamed. It looked like K-State would give the president a free pass and let him off without a whimper of protest or dissent. How could I let this happen when both my brother and best friend were at war in Vietnam through no choice of their own? My shame changed to anger. If nobody else took a stand, I would. I wanted to show the president that even at this little farm school, people wanted this pointless war to end. Soon, Nixon's helicopter would be landing right across the street. My window was the perfect spot for a banner the president would surely see. I pulled out a large pad of paper and a black marker pen. What message to send Nixon, who had promised peace with honor in his election 2 years earlier? My frustration with the apathy around me made me disgusted and cynical. My mind spun with ideas. End the war? No, too common. Bring our boys home? No, too predictable. I wanted to say something Nixon would remember. I wanted to say something he'd never seen before, something to give him pause. I wanted to belittle him. Well, Vice President Spiro Agnew was great at mocking others. His attacks on Democrats made news every day. Editors suspected Agnew had been corrupt as Maryland governor, but he shined as an attack dog for the president. He mastered the art of alliteration in his own blunt, belligerent, and bellicose style. Just that week, he had made news attacking the pusillanimous pussyfooting of liberals in Congress, and he lamented the nattering nabobs of negativism. A cynical idea popped into my mind. How about Agnew in 72? It's a perfect way to show Nixon that even a corrupt clown like Agnew would be better than him as president. Nixon would see this banner when he landed. The press would put photos in national papers and show it on the evening news. I blocked out my message, one letter per sheet. Soon it lay before me in bold architectural lettering. I raised the blinds of my window and started taping the letters one at a time to the window. The banner took form where everyone below could see it. A, G, N, E, W, space, I, N, space. The sudden sound of an opening door jarred me, racing my pulse. In the doorway stood two men. Mr. Parks, my clean-cut and usually friendly 40-something design instructor, silently evaluated what he was looking at. He looked disapprovingly at me, then at the banner on the window. Behind Parks stood a muscular-looking man in a dark suit. Neither moved or spoke for a while. In a threatening tone, Parks asked, "What are you doing, Lee?" "I'm celebrating American freedom." "What do you mean?" "I'm using my First Amendment right to free speech." "On the university window?" "Guess so." Mr. Parks glanced to the menacing man behind him, apparently a Secret Service agent, who said nothing, but raised his right hand with a quick gesture toward me, meaning, "Get rid of this guy and his sign." Parks said, "Everyone needs to clear the building now." I became irritated and defiant. I said, "I want to watch the helicopter land right here at my window." "Nobody can be inside this building for security reasons. Snipers are headed up to the roof right now," he said. I looked at Parks and the agent. Parks cocked his head as if asking, "Do you think this is worth it?" The deep growl of a truck below caught my attention, and I turned to see another troop truck pull slowly onto the rutted field. "Take down the sign," he said. I looked back at the men. The agent shifted his stance aggressively, folding his arms and blocking the door. "It's university property," Parks said sternly. "The sign has to go." Frustrated, intimidated, and humiliated, I took down each letter deliberately, as if in slow motion. Parks sighed. After I placed all the letters into a neat pile, Parks grabbed them and motioned me to the door. I walked toward the agent who didn't move. He stared at me for a moment. After a pause, he stepped back and gestured toward the exit stairway. They both followed me down the stairs and out the building. I glanced back. Both frowned. I walked across the street, head spinning. I felt angry. I felt humiliated. I looked up to my window. It looked so empty and pointless. The whole building looked pointless. President Nixon would get away free. I walked closer to the wire fence and saw soldiers watching me, smoking cigarettes. I flashed the peace sign. The youngest guy raised 2 fingers back and smiled. A fellow soldier smacked him on the shoulder, teasing, "You hippie." They laughed. I turned away and lit a cigarette too.
Our next reader is Jen Wolfe.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Dallin Wolfe, and I'm a part of Groundwaters book this year for 2020, and I have a story that is called Look What I've Become. I began my life on Earth as a cottonseed planted in a field full of cotton seeds like myself. As the sun would come up each morning and warm the soil, I began to swell, stretch, sprout, beginning my growth in that sun. As I matured and bloomed into a fuzzy bowl with a pointed shell for a cover, I had no idea what I would do or become in this world. I was plucked at maturity along with the rest of the field and taken to a cotton gin to be milled and become fabric. They plucked, pulled, and cleaned me, then combed my fuzzy body into a fine thread. I, along with the other bowls, were now one long thread and wound onto a spool, then added to a machine to become woven fabric. As I spin on the spool and watch a shuttle coming to whisk me through a valley of other threads, I'm getting excited. It happens. I slip across the valley of threads and back. My turn is over. That sure was fast. I wait along with all the other thread, watching the fabric grow. Soon, we are removed from this machine and then taken to be dyed or printed. What a job this has been. Pluck, wash, combed, spun, then wound and shuttled into a piece of cool cotton. We are moved into another department and are dyed a beautiful, comfortable medium blue. We dry. We're folded onto a bolt and shipped to a store. I was placed upon a shelf, looking out at all of the other colorful cottons looking back at me. The sound of a bell is ringing in the background. I see a beautiful woman walk slowly down each row. She is getting closer, touching and searching for just the right color to match the fabric swatch she has with her. She takes her time assessing and concentrating on what she's doing. She is so serious. She gets to the section I'm in and holds out the swatch, passing it by the other bolts, and I can feel a slight breeze as she passes me. With a hesitation, she backs up and touches me. Holding the swatch next to me and removes me from the shelf, we walk towards the bright window at the front of the store, and she says, "Perfect," in a low whisper. "I'll take 5 yards," she says to the sales lady, and a conversation begins. "What will you be making?" "Mask," replies the woman. "I'm making them for friends and family." The sales lady comments, "We've been making a lot of sales lately. Our situation is so tragic. The sale is finalized. Soon I am in a sewing room and being cut into curving pieces. I listen to the phone conversations about what is happening in the world, and I soon realize I'm going to be playing an important part in making the world a safer place. Music is playing. The lady is sewing me into a mask that matches her swatch fabric, and I will soon be traveling to a new home for a new face. My job will be one of protection along with looking good. I am proud I will fight to save this. I will, excuse me. I am proud I will fight to save a life and do my best to protect the one I now love. How was I to know when I was just a seedling and planted in the soil, I would be a part of a big fight to save lives? I am so proud. The end.
Our next reader is Renee Tehista.
Once every few months or so, I check the obituaries reported on the website of KLTZ, the local radio station in the area of Montana where I grew up. It's located in Glasgow, recently profiled as the most isolated town in America and officially dubbed the middle of nowhere by the Washington Post. Reading obituaries is not the ghoulish obsession some may think. Many folks my age keep in touch with their past this way. Variations in obituaries are surprisingly interesting and often provide family scribes an opportunity to showcase their writing skills. The obits vary in length from fairly brief to mini essays, cataloging events in the deceased's literal journey from cradle to grave. Obituaries provide snapshot histories of people that are often very engrossing. I learn fascinating details I've never heard before about the lives of people I once knew. Even strangers who lived in the area where I grew up turn out to have been remarkable people I wish I had known. It's humbling to realize I lived in a population outlier among a lot of folks who are more interesting than I am. Those obits of people I knew or were familiar with usually depict the deceased in a glowing light. In fact, I can confirm that one of the oldest admonitions known is impeccably observed. I've yet to read an obit that speaks ill of the dead. Though I and many others may possess memories that contradict the manufactured piety featured in the tribute, we graciously go along with the charade. As I've been reading these obituaries for the last few years, a remarkable number report that the deceased, quote, went home in the loving arms of Jesus, end quote. The Glasgow community appears to have a secret pipeline to a very busy Jesus. When I read the obit of a former high school classmate who was carried off in the loving arms of Jesus, I was surprised because Philo was a very large man. In high school, he was tall and skinny. But when I last saw him in 2005, he had filled out, as they say. His formerly 6'2" lanky frame now packed close to 300 pounds on it, left me wondering whether if Jesus had help carting Philo away. The obituary didn't say, but it did report that he was a loving father, grandfather, beloved husband, and all-around wonderful person who appeared on the basis of the obit to be eligible for canonization. Philo must have had a significant personality transformation over the years because my memory of him was quite different. But then I hadn't had much contact with him since high school, and I suppose it's possible that at least one of his 3 wives had a good word to say about him. The only wife I knew slightly was the first, and that was way back in 1957, when she was often seen in Philo's car, where he was keeping her company while her husband, Kenny B., Philo's close friend, was serving in the Navy somewhere near the South China Sea. In fairness, she did silence the wagging tongues and eventually divorced Kenny to marry Philo. A long period of time passed until I encountered her and Philo again in 1975 when I went back to Montana for a visit. Several of us former classmates, including Philo and his spouse, gathered for a party, during which I endured the extremely awkward situation of fending off her embarrassingly amorous advances, and she barely knew me. Unsurprisingly, given my experience with her, this wife a couple years later ran off with a guy who worked at my brother Paul's lumber yard. But Philo, apparently undaunted, acquired 2 more wives over the years, neither of whom I met. Certain verities tend to appear in obituaries that involve the afterlife, or more accurately, the self-assured commonly accepted belief that there is one. Being carried home in the loving arms of Jesus is one such obituary in principle. Another involves being reunited with loved ones who have passed on. This one is puzzling and got me questioning whether this allegedly blissful prospect was universally welcome. What if you would rather not be reunited with loved ones? For example, I loved all my deceased family members, but I'm not sure I want to spend eternity in their company. After all, I moved away from them in my lifetime and had no interest in living among or near them. Don't get me wrong, they were all wonderful people and fun to be around. But eternity is a very long time, which is another subject that troubles me. I'm not sure I want to hang around for eternity, nor do I have any idea what state of being I'll be inhabiting. Will I be ambulatory? I'd hate to be stuck in one place for that long. What if I get bored? These are questions that are never included in obituaries, I'm sorry to say, even the ones in which Jesus provides the transportation. In the not too distant future, I'll be confronting these issues. At the moment, I'm leaning toward the position that since I don't remember any discomfort, pain, or ennui before I was born, I'm guessing things will be pretty much the same after I'm gone. I've given up the debate about theism versus atheism. I no longer choose to call myself an atheist, since it requires that I define myself in relation to the concept of theism, which I consider a delusion, like the existence of the fabled unicorn. So far, there is no empirical evidence that unicorns are anything more than delusions, and I certainly don't refer to myself as a unicornist. But I accept empirical science, and if unicorns are found to exist, or the site of the afterlife is located, I'm ethically obliged to change my position. I think I'll put that in my obituary.
Our next reader is Pat Edwards, reading some of our friend Michael Haas Barker's work.
This story is called A Tribute to Haas Barker. Sadly, I have lost a good friend, and Groundwaters a very special, longtime contributor and supporter. Michael J. Barker wore several hats throughout his life. He worked as a logger until he was injured and could no longer work in the woods. He then was hired by Dr. Donald Schroeder of Eugene to take care of Doc Schroeder's herd of American buffalo in Coburg. He was an avid fisherman and sportsman, and he and his wife Chris spent time on the beautiful Rogue River. Eventually, Haas was offered the job to oversee the Paradise Lodge on the wild and scenic portion of the river that welcomed people from all over the world. He went back and forth between his home in Eugene, where he lived with Chris, and the Rogue River country, where he maintained the lodge and its hired hands for over 6 years. By then, Mike had been dabbling in the art of poetry, writing about his days as a logger. He took on the name of Haas. Haas spent those 6 years in Paradise writing in his spare time. During the bleak and cold winters there, he holed up in a cabin on the river to write his 3 books of poetry, just as one of his idols, Zane Grey, did before him. He later wrote a memoir about those days and called it My Time in Paradise. Haas's love for Mother Nature and the beauty that enveloped him during those years, winters as well as the tourist season, came through his writing in a very special way. Some people were sometimes taken aback by Haas's irreverent, non-PC way of talking and writing about some of his less serious material. But he had a heart as big as the outdoors, And being a logger in his early years, he had a huge respect for not only Mother Nature's animals, but her forests as well. Haas was a good friend and an amazing poet in my estimation. He will be missed by many. Rest in peace, Haas. And I'm going to read one of his poems that I included with his tribute. It's called Peace, and it was written by Michael J. Bacher, as we know as Haas. Peace you'll find is in a state of mind. You see it's mainly in your head. That's what we're all trying to find, but we run out of time instead. That smell and the feel of wood heat on a cold and snowy morn. Wood all split and stacked up neat. There's peace in the work that keeps us warm. There's peace in that tired old feeling you've grown to love each night, in playing the hand that life is dealing and knowing you've played it right. Peace lives in each and every one. Pity them that never find it. A war not waged is never won. No spoils reward the violent. There's peace in the roar of rolling thunder, and the lightning can strike your soul. The crash and flash are works of wonder, lighting skies as dark as coal. There's the peace a tended garden lends to live off your own lands. There's peace in the pain of bends, and love in the touch of crossed hands.
Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to fight back. Sometimes it's all too much. Lost inside the black. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Sometimes we need to lift the voices of those who've overcome and expose the ones that made the choices to stay and fight, not run. Our stories are brilliant.